Cynthia Rylant was born in 1954 in Hopeville, West Virginia. She lived in Illinois with her father, John June Smith, a sergeant in the U.S. Army who fought in the Korean War, and her mother, Lietrel Rylant Smith. Her parents divorced when she was 4 years old. She enrolled at Morris Harvey College, now the University of Charleston. She loved reading and hearing stories and did academically well. She enjoyed working with words. After receiving her master's degree in 1976, Rylant married a young man who taught classical guitar and who was learning to be a carpenter. She began her career working as a part-time English teacher in 1979 through 1980 at Marshall University. She also worked for a year as a librarian in the children's room at the public library in Huntington. She relocated to Kent, Ohio, where she received her library science degree from Kent State University in 1982. She obtained a job at the Akron Public Library as a children's librarian in 1983 and at the University of Akron as a part-time English lecturer in 1983 through 1984. She was also a part-time lecturer in 1991 at the Northeast Ohio University's College of Medicine in Rootstown. Rylant was inspired to become a writer while working in the children's room at the public library in Huntington. Her writing works are based mostly on her childhood life. She was influenced mainly by Donald Hall's poetic picture book, The Oxcart Man, and Randall Jarrell's lyrical novella, The Animal Family. She referred to these works as perfect little pieces of art. Shortly after she started writing, she and her husband had a son named Nathaniel, whom they named after Nathaniel Hawthorne, one of Rylant's favorite authors. Rylant has written more than 100 children's books in English and Spanish. Her works consist of genres of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry for children and young adults. She has created numerous works of contemporary novels, historical fiction for young adults, middle grade fiction and fantasy, lyrical prose poems, beginning readers, collection of short stories, volumes of poetry and verse, books of prayers and blessings, 2 autobiographies, and several biographical works. In her autobiography, But I'll Be Back Again, she writes about how she really did not get to know her father, and how she never had a chance to say goodbye to him. This was all the reason she had to become a writer. She also writes about how not only did she lose her father, but her mother also left her with her grandparents to go to nursing school. Her mother would write and visit her, but that was not enough. In her first book, When I Was Young in the Mountains, published in 1982, based on Rylant's childhood with her grandparents in Appalachia, it is a collection of vignettes about the busy, joyous life of a small community where Rylant's grandparents provided a positive and nurturing environment. She had great years with her grandparents, eating big stacks of pancakes and hot cocoa, hot dogs and chickens, teaberry leaves and honeysuckle, and aunts and cousins to sleep with at night and hug until someone could return for her. This book received the ALSC Caldecott Award in 1982. Her 1984's Waiting to Waltz, A Childhood, contains 30 autobiographical poems in free verse that outline the author's next stage of her life growing up in Beaver, West Virginia. Rylant portrays the happy and sad times she felt, such as the death of her father. The Relatives Came is a humorous and entertaining book about relatives visiting family in Virginia. This book is based on the times during Rylant's childhood when her aunts and cousins would stay over at her grandparents' house while she was living there. She always enjoyed having so many relatives visit. This book received the ALSC Caldecott Award in 1985 and also received the Boston Globe Horn Book Honor. In 1985, she published her first novel, A Blue-Eyed Daisy, which is about Ellie Farley, an 11-year-old living in the hills of West Virginia. Ellie recounts several memorable moments that occurred during her 11th year, such as getting kissed at her first co-ed party and attending the funeral of a classmate. Ellie deepens her relationship with her father, Oki, a former miner who lost his job in an accident. In 1986, Rylant published one of her best books, the young adult novel, A Fine White Dust. This book is about Pete, a 7th grader who lives in the rural South. Pete becomes a born-again Christian after being converted by charismatic preacher James W. Carson. When Carson offers Pete the chance to go with him as his disciple, the boy decides to leave his parents and his best friend Rufus. Carson, who is viewed by Pete as God in the flesh, eventually runs off with Darlene, a young woman who works at the town soda fountain. Pete feels betrayed, but because of his faith in God, deals with it by having a more realistic view of human nature. A Fine White Dust won a Newbery honor in 1987. In addition to the autobiographical But I'll Be Back Again, Rylant created Appalachia, The Voices of Sleeping Birds, a picture book for older readers that is a tribute to the region and its people. In 1991, this book received the Boston Globe Horn Book Honor. Rylant considers the emotions and feelings of young people, but she also considers adults and the elderly, such as in Missing May, a novel for young adults published in 1992. The novel is about 12-year-old Summer, who went to stay with her Aunt May and her Uncle Ob in West Virginia after the death of her mother 6 years before. Summer attempts to save her uncle from despair after the death of his wife. During the time he had been mourning her death, he senses his wife's presence. They find an unusual person to interpret, and the person is a boy from Summer's class who at one time had a near-death experience, and the three of them end up going to Charleston to find a medium at the Spiritualist Church, and the trip becomes a personal quest for each of them. Missing May was Rylant's highly acclaimed book, and it received the Boston Globe Horn Book Honor in 1991 and a Newbery Medal in 1993. In her poetry book, God Went to Beauty School, Rylant takes teens on spiritual journey as she explores what God's life on earth would be like. Her reflective and often humorous verse follows God as he tries out human activities, such as getting a dog, writing a fan letter, and making spaghetti. This book received a Blue Ribbon Nonfiction Book Award. Rylant has written many series books, such as her fiction series books for beginning readers, the popular Henry and Mudge Easy Readers, about a small boy and a large dog, which are based on Rylant's son and a dog she knew. Henry and Mudge, the first book of their adventures, appeared in 1987. This book is about Henry, an only child, and his dog Mudge, who is 3 feet tall and a mix between St. Bernard and Great Dane. Henry and Mudge become very attached to each other, and Henry becomes very sad when Mudge is lost, but gets happy again once Mudge is found. Rylant uses humor in this book, such as Mudge's drooling and love of dirty socks. Other series books are the Annie and Snowball series, Cobble Street Cousins series, the Everyday series, Mr. Putter and Tabby series, and the Poppleton series. She continues to write series titles for young readers such as Rise, Private Eyes, and other easy-to-read books are volumes of rhyming picture books such as If You'll Be My Valentine and Long Night Moon, which describes the different moons that Native American cultures use to mark the changing seasons. Rylant has also done illustrations for some of her own books. She began by illustrating some of her picture books in the early 1990s by using folk art style that complements her stories. Rylant's first illustrations in her everyday books feature the artist's child-appealing collages. The everyday books are board books for toddlers that introduce literature by using familiar subjects such as homes and pets. And Dog Heaven. Dog Heaven is about the author's illustrator's idea of what dogs experience in the afterlife, such as fields to run in, plenty of angel children to pet them, and appetizing cat-shaped biscuits to eat. The book is illustrated in bright acrylics that blend naive forms with unusual colors. Cat Heaven is another self-illustrated work about a kitty afterlife full of trees and clouds to perch on, soft angel laps to sit on, lots of toys to play with, and full dishes of food to eat. Rylant believes that writing has given her a sense of self-worth that she didn't have throughout her childhood years. She is proud of herself and knows that she has a worthy place on earth and that writing books is her calling. She hopes that one day people will buy a book for someone they love best and that they will say that before they do anything else, they read the book.